Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, Nedarim Samachay. We begin right on top of the Amud Tanya. Says the Gemara, Tanya han mudar ano mechaveroi. If a fellow made a neder against having hana'ah from his friend, ein matirin lo ela b'fanav. So if he wants to release himself of this neder, he can only do so in the presence of the other fellow. Why? The Ran presents two possible reasons. One is to facilitate embarrassment. And the Ran says this would only pertain to a neder which affects his friend. So he made a sort of a commitment to his friend and he wants to undo. He wants to release himself of that commitment only in his presence. So if it's lahana asai, if it's latay alasai, if it's to benefit Shimon, this which Ruvain is committing, so it's only fair to go and do it in his presence. And let's see, in his presence, will you try to renege on that commitment? So if yes, then we release you of your commitment. But it's only fair. You go find that person and then go and present your case to absolve yourself of your commitment. Now, according to this pshat, then this requirement to do it b'fanav is only if it was meant to benefit that person. If that neder was intended to benefit, to be mahana that person. So then it's only fair to backtrack on that commitment in his presence. Don't do it behind his back. But if it's just a plain neder which wasn't meant to benefit that person per se, then there's no reason to do it b'fanav. That's according to this approach. Ran brings another approach in the name of the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says the reason why you do it only b'fanav, b'pnei hacheshat, to avoid any tinge of suspicion, any appearance of wrongdoing. So I'm Ruvain, you're Shimon, I make a neder not to have enough from you. And then I go to the Bezdin and they release me of that neder, and then I go and I have enough from you, and you see I'm having enough, and you wonder in your mind, what happened? Why are you reneging? Why are you violating your commitment? It creates chashat, suspicion of wrongdoing, and therefore the Chachamim established, when you have this type of neder, make sure to go back to that person, or bring him to the Bezdin. In any case, he should be aware. The Ran says, according to this pshat, as long as he's aware of the fact that you're doing Hataras Nedarim, you can just inform him, I have released myself of this neder, and that explains why I'm going to join your simcha, etc. That diffuses this chashash of chashad. So two reasons for this halacha: either b'pnei hachashad, in which case notification would mitigate that, or kadesh is bayish b'pnei habusha, so that he's embarrassed to renege on his commitment. And according to that pshat in the Yerushalmi, it's only a concern if the whole neder was meant to benefit that person. It's only right to confront him when I am mati the neder. Okay, so that will be two ways to learn the Gemara with a nafkamina on either way. Tanya hamudar no mechaver. So again, he has a neder against having enough from his friend, and there's a girsa b'fanav. So the neder was done b'fanav, which probably means that he knew about it. Okay, ein matirin lo el b'fanav. So there is no way to be matir unless you find that person and you are matir the neder in his presence. Now the Iran brings here that b'di eved perhaps it would work even shalei b'fanav. It's just a takana lechatchila. You should do it b'fanav. How do we know that in fact this is true? Minahan Amili. Amar of Nachman from Moshe Rabbeinu with Yisro. We know that he had promised Yisro not to leave Midian without his permission. The Nefarshim give two reasons for it. One is to keep Yisro company. One is to protect himself, Moshe Rabbeinu, to protect Moshe Rabbeinu from his threatening opponents, as we learned yesterday. Those who were pursuing him, Paroi, and Dasan, Vaviron. So he promised Yisro to stick around. And what happens later? Amar of Nachman dechsiv vayemer Hashem al Moshe b'Midian leichshav Mitzrayim ki meisu kol hanoshim. Hashem tells Moshe b'Midian, seems to be an extra word, while he was in Midian, near his father-in-law Yisro. It's time to go back. All your pursuers are no longer there. They've died. As we learned yesterday, they've lost their influence, they've lost their wealth. What's the point of saying b'Midian? What's the lesson here? Amar lei, because Hashem is telling him, in effect, look, you have all the conditions required for Hataras Nedarim. B'Midian nadarta. It's true. You were in Midian when you made the neder, meaning it was a commitment to your father-in-law, and you're still there. Leich v'hater nedarcha b'Midian. So it's perfect timing, perfect location. Go make the Hataras Nedarim in your father-in-law's presence with his knowledge, which will be the proper procedure to undo that neder. So you learn from here that when it's a neder pertaining to somebody else, he's got to know, he's got to be aware. The Chsiv, where do we see that Moshe Rabbeinu promised Yisro? Vayayel Moshe. It says Vayayel Moshe l'sheves as a ish. Vayayel is a lashon shvua. He promised. He made an oath that he will stay with him. Ein Allah ela shavua, like we find elsewhere that Allah is a reference to a shvua. T'chsiv vayavei it oisai ba'Allah. This was by Nebuchadnezzar with Chizkiah, with Tzidkiyahu, and he brought him into an Allah. He made him swear, made him promise. We'll see in a minute what the promise was. And then it says, "V'gam b'melech Nebuchadnezzar morad asher b'yoi belehim." The pasuk says that Tzidkiyahu, in fact, swore. Where did he swear? So apparently, when it says "Vayavei Osei ba'Allah," Allah is a reference to this shvua. So clearly, Allah is a shvua, and the words "Vayayel Moshe" likewise denote that Moshe Rabbeinu swore to Yisro, and Hashem tells him the only way to be matter that shvua is here in Midian, in front of the subject of your neder, of your shvua, which was Yisro. Once we're on the topic of Tzidkiyahu HaMelech's shvua to Nebuchadnezzar, what was it all about? What's the background to the story? So the pasuk says that he rebelled, marad. He turned around and he rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, who he had promised, who had committed to with a shavua. What happened? What was the commitment, and how did he renege on that commitment? My marduse. In what way did he renege? Answers the Gemara, Ashkechet Tzidkiyahu. It so happens that one time Tzidkiyahu notices Nebuchadnezzar. He notices this big king, this respectable king, the Ahava Ka'achal Arnavachaya. He was disembering, he was eating a live rabbit. And some learn that he was trying to arouse his troops to achzorius, to be mean, to be tough in battle. So he's showing them, a good example of how to behave in achzorius, with meanness of the ultimate type. In any case, Nebuchadnezzar was quite embarrassed. Amar leis, he tells Tzidkiyahu, this is a secret, never reveal this. Ishtabalid le'megalis ilavi, don't reveal this to anybody. Perhaps he was doing it, with his close circle of generals or something like that. In any case, don't make this public knowledge. Le'tipaik milsan, this incident should never be revealed. Ishtabale, Tzidkiyahu followed through, he swore. that he will keep it a secret. L'saif, ultimately, Hava commit starts at Gyo Begufei. He was personally very distressed about it, meaning he needed to reveal it. Because he felt that in order to protect Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash, he has to, weaken the resolve of Nebuchadnezzar's, accomplices, and by bad-mouthing him to his troops, to his fellow warriors, he will facilitate a lack of respect in Nebuchadnezzar, and he would weaken their resolve to go into battle with him and to follow him into war. That was his motive, and he was very distressed. He had a good secret, a good card to play. He needed to divulge. But he had a shvuah. Itchel ashvu asay. So he went to the Chacham, the Sanhedrin, and he undid the shvuah. And he revealed the story. And the word got back to Nebuchadnezzar. And he was enraged. Shama Nebuchadnezzar, the kumavazenly. Nebuchadnezzar hears that they're embarrassing him, that they're bad-mouthing him, degrading him for what he did. Shalach v'aisi Sanhedrin v'tzidkiyo. So he called over Sanhedrin and Tzidkiyo. Amar Lahoini, he tells them, Chazisan ma'ka'av v'tzidkiyo. Look, did you see what Tzidkiyo did to me? Lav hachi hava. Isn't it so that he swore the ishtaba b'shma d'shmaya? Did he swear in the name of Hashem L'Loi Megali? Did he want L'Loi Megalis, that you won't reveal the secret? Why'd you go tell everybody? Armalei Tzidkiyo responds, Ishtili ashvu asa. I released myself of that shvuah. I was mata the shvuah. Armalei mitchalan ashvu asa. So he asked him, there's such an idea of being shayel on a shvuah. Armalei, yes. He says, sure. Amar Lahu, so he turns to the Sanhedrin. I have a question. Befanav or afilu shlei befanav? When it's a shvuah, a commitment that pertains to another person, is it fair to do it even without him knowing? Or does halacha dictate that it needs to be done in his presence? Amar Lei befanav. Sanhedrin responded truthfully, yes, it has to actually be in his presence. Amar Lahu, so the Rasha asks them, Ba'atun ma'avdisan, so why'd you do it in this way? Without my knowledge. My time alayam rison. Leila Tzidkiyo, why didn't you inform Tzidkiyo HaMelech that it's not legal? You shouldn't have gone along with him. So the Iran actually says that their heter was because it was a dvar mitzvah. Tzidkiyo have a mitzvah b'yoser. He needed to do it. He felt it was important. And he says another point that it was mitzvah samelach. Tzidkiyo was their king, and there's a mitzvah for them to listen to him. In any case, that was the reason for going along with it, even though this is not the ideal heter. In any case, having been scolded by the Rasha Nebuchadnezzar, they had no response. Miyad, immediately yeshvu la'oretz. This is a pasuk in Eicha. Yeshvu la'oretz yidmu ziknei bastien. So they were silenced and they dropped down to the floor. Amar Yitzchak Melamed, we learned Shishamtu Karim Tachtem. They pulled out their pillows from beneath them. They just sat on the floor, in quiet acknowledgement. They've been had by the Rasha. They had no response. Okay, in any case, we learn from here that typically when there's a neder or a shvuah for the same money pertain to somebody else, the hatara needs to be b'fanav dafka. Continues the Mishnah. In the previous Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda tells us you can use noilad, some future development, as a way to get out of a neder. Chachamim disagree. It wasn't a factor that was present during the neder. You can't use it to undo a neder. There are some phenomenon which appear like noilad because they're a later development. But in halacha they're not treated like noilad. We'll soon explain. But chacham don't agree. They also consider that as an noilad, and some are actually agurious and all agree that in fact it is such. So what's this sort of in-between case which is or isn't noilad? Ketzad. Omar koinem shani noise es plainis. Shaviyara. He's making a neder against marrying a certain Isha, and he explains, she's got a bad father. I don't want to get too close to that family. So he's explaining himself. He's elaborating as per the reason for his neder. His neder is based on this factor. It turns out that the factor is non-existent. Amr loy meis. They tell him, look, he died. Father-in-law is no longer going to get in your way. Oishasa tshuva, or he did tshuva. Great guy. Another example is, this house for me is off limits, and I'm explaining why. Scary dog there. There's a snake there. Then he's informed that there's no longer a dog or a snake. No dog alive. The dogs died, the snake was killed. So all these are almost like noilad. Harihen ki noilad. They give the impression of noilad because there was a subsequent turn of events after the neder, which sort of changed the equation. But really, says Rabbi Meir, then he's not really like a noilad. Why? Because if he would have said, I'm not going to this house, plain, simple, period. Then a year later it turns into a shul. That's the case we had in the previous Mishnah. That's really noilad. So although he can claim, had I known that it would turn into a shul, I never would have made that neder. But you didn't explain. You didn't elaborate. You didn't condition your neder on it not being a shul. But here he did. He says, this issue is not for me. Look at her father. Turns out her father's a great man. This house is not for me. There's a scary snake there. Well, guess what? There's no snake today. So his neder is contingent on that phenomena, which is no longer in existence. And therefore it can be used to release him of his neder, to the point that perhaps you don't even need to go to a chacham. It was like a tanai. And therefore the neder is mutter. The chacham don't agree. They also consider that to be a noilad, which cannot be used for ataras and darim. Says the Gemara, what exactly happened? Right? And the dog died. Meis noiladu. Question is, when did the dog die? After he made the neder. That's noilad. How can you say it's not really noilad? It is. Amar Rav Huna nasa ketoyle nidra b'davar. Fact is, he conditioned his neder on a specific detail. This house is scary because of the dog. I'm not marrying that Isha because of her father. That's not really noilad if things change. As long as her father is behaving in this manner, I'm not going near that family. As long as the dog is in this house, I'm not going near that dog, near the house. No dog, no neder. That's Rav Huna's approach. For Rabbi Yehuda Amar, it's even better than that. When the Mishnah says the dog died, you know when that happened? Prior to the neder. Unbeknownst to him, while he was making the neder, there was no longer a dog. So the neder never took off. Ukvar meis. Ukvar is a tshuva. The dog was already dead. The father-in-law, prospective father-in-law, was already about tshuva. Ka'amri lei. Kamri nele. And therefore, it's not really noilad. It was a mistaken impression that he had. So the neder never took off to begin with. So it would seem that both of these pshatim, Rav Huna and Rav Yechon, will both hold, since the facts were different than either different at the time of the neder or later on they changed. You don't even need to go to a chacham because there is no neder. Neder was based on a certain premise, which is not there or was never there. Mosiv Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba has a kasha. The Mishnah later in Daf Samachvav speaks about another fellow who makes a koinem she'eni noisila plinius, a nether against marrying such and such person, ku'ura, who is not nice looking. Varino, it turns out that he was mistaken. He thought she was chura, she was really pleasant looking. Shechayra, he said, I'm not marrying this Isha who was dark skinned. Vari Lavana, turns out she's light skinned. Ketzara, she's short. Vari Arucha, turns out she is actually tall. So it was a mistaken, premise. What is the halacha? Mutarba, he may marry her. Let me play shekura v'nasas no. The reason for the heter is not because she indeed was a chura and then developed it to something else, she became na. Or originally she was shechira and then v'nasas lavana and then it turns out that she whitened. Or ktsara v'nasas arucha, she was short and then she became tall. That's not the case. That's not what we're speaking about. Rather, elo shaneder tos. We're speaking the case where this is all the Lashon HaMishnah, that this fellow was simply mistaken in his facts. He was mistaken in his homework. He thought she was short, she was really tall. So the nether was a tos mi'ikara. Okay? Now, the Ran points out, why is it specifically speaking about such a scenario that it was really different than what he thought. So the Ran says, because in this case you cannot apply the same formula, the same rationale as we applied by the case of the house with the dog. You see, he says, a dog is bound to die. It makes sense that that it was tully in the life of the dog, and the dog dies. There's no neder. But to say that a ktsara will turn into a lavana, into a arucha, that's unlikely, and therefore you cannot say that he was hinging his nether on her looking this way, and then if you change that factor, then the nether is mutter. It wasn't part of his program. He wasn't expecting it to change. So unlike the previous Mishnah, which were factors that are sort of bound to change, good chance a person will do tshuva, etc. So when he makes a nether, it was dependent upon that factor being present. And as soon as that factor changes, the nether is mutter. But here we're speaking about absolute phenomena, which are not really likely to change. And therefore, even if it would change, it wouldn't really change the nether, because the nether was not based on that factor's presence, which would change when the factor changes. That's not what his das was. He wasn't expecting it to change. Or another pshat, says the Ran, when he says, I'm not going to marry this Isha because she is a ktsara, it wasn't sort of a reason. It was just like identifying her. The ktsara Isha, I'm not marrying, period. So even if the situation would, the factors would change, it wouldn't be a heter. In any case, that's the way the Mishnah presents the case. We're not speaking about a changed equation. We are speaking about a to'os mi'ikara. He thought she was one thing, she really was something else to begin with. Okay? Fine. Now, in the previous Mishnah, we had two ways to explain. Right? We had Rav Huna, who says, a father turned into a Baal Tshuva, and he was toiled the nether upon being Ra. He's no longer Ra. He's toiled in the house that has the Kelev. Kelev is no longer there. But Rabbi Yehuda says, the father was a fine man at the time of the nether. It's a toes. A dog was not there at the time of the nether. It's a nether but toes. So now, it's fully understandable. It makes sense. According to Rav Huna, who says that the previous Mishnah is not speaking that the equation was non-existent. Rather, the equation was really there, the way he thought it was. But then it changed later on, and since he was tailored nether in that factor, then the factor changes. That's ample reason for heter. So according to that pshat in that Mishnah, we understand that Tana Teilah Nidra B'davar. Right? So first, we speak about a fellow who's Teilah Nidra B'davar. Right? Again, according to Rav Huna, Damar Nasa Teilah Nidra B'davar. The pshat in the previous Mishnah, the heter is because he was Teilah Nidra in a certain phenomenon. So therefore, Tana Toila Nidar B'davar. First, the Mishnah discusses that. That's ample reason for heter. And then we move on to the next case. V'Tana Nadar Tos. We speak about a more outright heter, which is Neder Tos, where the factor was non-existent at the time of the Neder. So it's bringing out two different chidushim. First we speak about a greater chiddush, then sort of to an easier chiddush. El Rabbi Yehuda the Amar Kvar Meis, Kvar Asar Tshuva, according to Rabbi Yehuda's approach, where the reason for the heter in the previous Mishnah was because it was a tos. He thought Aviyah was Ra. He thought it was a kelev. It turns out that it wasn't there. It wasn't the way he thought. So that the nether itself was another tos. So why repeat itself? Lama lila misni trei zimni nether tos kasha. Why would the Mishnah have to repeat the same idea once and again? It's based on the same exact premise. He was mistaken in his facts. So why repeat it? Once there, once here. Kasha, we'll leave it as a kasha. Here comes another chiddush from the same Tana Rab Meir. Although we learned back in the Chav Beis, we learned many times in the Masechta, we don't pressure people. We try not to intimidate this fellow. Well, do you know how terrible it is to make a neder? Because then you'll never know. It won't really be a true gauge of his real feelings. Even if he retracts, maybe he's just intimidated. He's pressured. It's not a genuine expression of regret. But, says Rab Meir, certain things you can use. You can use a specific mitzvah in the Torah to address his situation, to dissuade him from a neder. But we can tell him. These aren't so, scary and intimidating. And if in fact he goes along and regrets, it's you hope it's genuine and real. For instance, we tell him, Ilu Yisei Adeya. You're making a Nedarim against, interacting with people. If you would have known, it's an expression of an avera. You're taking revenge. You're harboring hard feelings. It's an expression of dislike towards a yid. What happened to Avos Yisrael? Why are you disengaging from people? How are you going to support this fellow? How are you going to give this poor man tzedakah if he can't have enough from you? Shema Ya'ani, maybe he'll lose his wealth. He'll need to come on to you for tzedakah. And how are you going to support him? If there's a neder against giving him hana. So once we confront him with these psukim, and he responds in kind, Amar, he says, oh, you're right. If only I would have even had the slightest inkling that my neder leads me to these averis, lo yisei noider, of course, I would never have thought of making this neder. If he does that, he's a mutter, he's off the hook. So we're going to focus on the last pasuk, which compels a person to support a poor man, a friend, a relative in need. Nema, even if you challenge him, did you know that this type of neder is going to collide with the chiyuv d'oraisa of giving tzedakah v'chei imach? The person could just respond and say, Nema, he'll say, Kol damani lav alai nafil. You think every person that becomes an ani, comes running to me, is my responsibility. My demoti lilafarnasai. True, I have to contribute to the town's tzedakah fund. True. What's obligated, what's mechuyev to me, what falls on me, meaning my part, bahadi kuli alma, mefarnas nalei. I'll do it together with everybody else. I'll give the gaba, my dues, my tzedakah money, and that's it. And the ani will take from the gaba, which is mutter. The Ran brings the Mishnah back on the Ches. You can actually use an intermediary. I can give money to Reuben, give Shimon money to give over to Levi, as long as he doesn't instruct him to do so. So even if Levi cannot accept from Reuben directly, but by way of a third party, it's mutter. I'm going to pay my tzedakah dues every month to the Gabbai, and the Gabbai will give the poor people, including this enemy of mine, who may not have direct hana from me. So what kind of a threat is this? What do you mean? I'll be Mekayim my mitzvah beautifully by giving the Gabbai Tzedakah. So this was a question posed to the Rabbanon, and the Zagir said it was posed to Rabba. Omer Leis, Rabba responded, Ani Omer. My response to that is like this. Kol ha-noifel, ein ha-noifel li-dei Gabbai Tchila. He says typically, when a person is noifel, he loses his financial footings. Typically, who does he go to first? You think he goes to the town's fund first, to the Gabbai first? No. First he tries privately by friends and relatives to help him out. So that's the problem. If you're disengaging from this fellow, and one day he comes to the point that he needs financial support, who is he going to go to first? You think he's going to go to the city fund first? No. He'll try to keep it under wraps. Try to keep it confidential. First, the person he's going to come to is you, his friend, his relative, his neighbor. And if you make this neder against him, you're going to be in trouble. And therefore it can be used as a way to discourage these types of nedarim. Says the Mishnah, another way to discourage a person. You can use the vast ksuba expenditure, the chiyuv of ksuba, to dissuade a person, to discourage a person, a husband, who made a neder against his wife having an offer from him. We present this husband with his ksuba obligations as a factor to discourage him from a neder against his wife. In fact, there's a story. This fellow made a neder against having a no from his wife, which spells trouble. And she had a pretty big ksuba. A tough dinner. And the fact is that way back when they married, in better times, he obligated himself to a huge ksuba payout. Way more than the standard 400 dinarim in case he divorces. Okay, now it's time to divorce. And the case is presented to Rabbi Kiva. They're divorcing and he's fully obligated. In fact, Rabbi Kiva says no discounts. He says, Rabbi, 400 zuz right here. Rabbi, so he says to Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi, ches, give me a discount. Look, when father passed away, you know what he left for me and my brother? 800 dinar in total. Notal achidal meis, vanidal meis. My brother took 400. I was left with merely 400. You're going to get that all from me? Loidaya, isn't it enough? Isn't it fair for her? Shatitolhi masayim. Let's split it. She takes 200. Vani masayim. I'll take 200. Rabbi Kiva says no discounts. Even if you're compelled to sell the hair off your head, you'll pay her to the last penny of the ksuba. Amar Lei said this fellow was really in a bind. He says, I was expecting a discount. If I would have only realized what this situation will lead to, I never would have made a neder. I would have lived in peace and harmony with her. Rabbi Kiva was mati the neder based on this acknowledgement. So this backs up the halacha that you can use the ksuba payout obligation as a method of discouragement, a method of ataras nedarim. Now, Rabbi Kiva tells him, there's no way out. You wrote, you're mechayev, you're obligated, pay it out. Even if you sell the hair on your head, which is really, it's not real estate, it's metatalin, right? It's movable items. Metatalimi mishtadil ksuba, it's a chiddush. Typically, when an isha marries, she's thinking, ksuba usually happens through husband's death, or divorce. She's thinking real estate, something which is, secure, not going anywhere. That's where her smichas das is on. That's really what she's, banking on, so to speak. Not metaltalin, movables which can just, be taken away and never seen from again. So it's a chiddush to say that metaltalin, the seir of his roish, a meshabet to the ksuba, metaltalin mishtab the ksuba. Also, is that true that a metaltalin also meshabet are also bound ksuba payout. Amar Abaye, no, you're right. We don't mean he's not going to have to actually pay the sareshay, only karka. Karka shava chesmi is dinar. This fellow was yeresh karka, 800 dinar worth, which he split with his brother, and he had 400, which he needed to pay her in full. That's karka, not metatla. Asks the Gemara, what do you mean? But the Mishnah speaks about his hair. Vaktani sar reishay. With sar reishay, that's metatlanu. Hachikam, he meant to tell him like this. Even if you give away every last asset of yours, with nothing left for yourself, which will compel you to sell your hair to support yourself, even if it compels you to resort to selling your own hair to support yourself, you still have to give it all away. Give what away? The karka away. Asks the Gemara. There's a halacha called misadron the Baal Chayiv. If a person commits to hegdish and he's short on funds, there's a whole arrangement. We give him, we set aside what he needs, for 12 months. And that's his own, private, allowance, and the rest he gives to hegdish. So we don't literally take away, every last penny, leaving him totally destitute. And here it would seem that we give her everything. So can we, conclude from here that there's a machlokes above metzia whether in a situation where a person is obligated, he has a loan and he's got to pay up and he's totally short. Do we take it all away, leaving him with nothing, or do we actually give him some allowance, a reasonable amount for next year, and the rest we give to the Baal Chayiv? It would seem from this Mishnah we don't do that. Ein masadron the Baal Chayiv. We don't make this arrangement for a Baal Chayiv. He has to give away every single penny. Perhaps we are masader. We would make an arrangement for him. But the chiddush here is that even if he's agreeable, he says, you know what, I don't need favors. I'm giving you everything. Everything. And all he's left with is the sar roishay to support himself. We still don't tear up the ksuba unless she gets paid in full. So let's say he wouldn't have, enough to pay the full amount, but he's giving her everything that he has. He's being totally generous, leaving nothing for himself. Which is really, lifnim mishur sadin, beyond the letter of the law. Don't think, says Rabbi Yehuda to this fellow, don't think that, you're off the hook. No. If you manage to get more, income later on, you have to complete the process. You have to pay out the whole ksuba payout. That was the point that he was making. But perhaps, halachically speaking, we do the concept of misadron Baal Chayiv. Typically, we would, make an arrangement, a financial arrangement, leave a reasonable amount within the hands of the loiva to just get him through the year. But here we're speaking, if he did it even if Nimr Shur Sadin, he gave her everything. But if it wasn't the complete payout, you're going to have to work and work until you actually pay it out. Just because you're generous doesn't mean you get off the hook until you pay out the full chiyuv k'suba. So what did we learn today? We had a chiddush that if there's a neder which pertains to somebody else, he has to know about the Hataras Nedarim. We found this by Moshe Rabbeinu with Yisrael. We found this by Tzidkiyahu with the Russian Nebuchadnezzar. Rameir is mechadish that when one actually stipulates in the actual neder that is dependent on a certain phenomena, and then we find the phenomena to be non-existent, whether according to Rav Huna, even if it was a later development, or according to Rabbi Yehuda, it was totally non-existent from day one, the heter is off. Rameir says you can use a pasuk in the Torah, a lav, an asay, avas Yisrael, etc., to discourage a person from keeping his neder. As well, we find the next Mishnah we can use the large ksuba payat to discourage a person from holding on to his neder and to restore peace and harmony in a Jewish home. May we have much haslacha, b'suras toivos, and siyata d'shmaya. Amen.